This is the CHRILLCAST. I'm Chris.
And I'm not Will.
No, he's not Will. That's why we crossed his name out. Put that down there. It's good to go. Um, Today is Throwback Thursday. And before we start that, I will let Spencer plug his channel one more time if I can even find it. Hold on. I don't know what happened here, but I've lost my nice, neat tab with his stuff open. So there you go. Tell everybody who you are.
Hi, everybody. I'm Spencer Presley. I'm a small, plucky boy from the suburban areas of Kansas. And when I'm not picking corn and thinking of witty things to say at 12 o'clock on a Sunday night, I like to make weekly podcasts and basically form a community of like-minded people who enjoy Shin Megami Tensei, Persona, and all things in between cursory around there, or even just people who don't even like it and just like to kind of lurk in the Facebook shadows and be like, why are there like 1,000 of you who are in this group, look at posts, but just don't like or do anything? One day I'll figure out what these people are doing. I can see you looking at it. You just need to do something here.
Just for the record, I am going to join that Facebook group, but I'm not in it yet, apparently. I thought I was, but I'm not. We'll figure it out.
All right.
Today
It's an elite club. You gotta go to facebook.com/groups/SMTN and fill out a questionnaire. Hey, maybe don't even fill it out. I'll let anybody in there. We don't even know if these are real people in the group. We're just filling numbers like mail-in ballots. We're letting dogs into the group. They aren't even real people.
Yeah, and robots like Igus. Anyways, today is all about Persona 2 Eternal Punishment. It's a game that was I'm just gonna read the script because if I go off script, this is gonna be bad. All right, Persona 2 Eternal Punishment is a role-playing video game developed by Atlus and chronologically the third installment, even though it's Persona 2, in the Persona series, a sub-series in the Megami Tensei franchise. It was originally published on June 29th, 2000 by Atlus in Japan and later in the year for North America on PlayStation 1. The game was later remade by Atlus for the PlayStation Portable. This version was only released in Japan in 2012 and never received any kind of overseas releases at all to this day. And there is a translation team headed by Iwakura Productions trying to do a fan translation of the game. If people don't know that does exist. I think it's on a hiatus right now, but they are still working on it. In response to this, the PlayStation version was released on PSN, PlayStation Network, in 2013. The game is currently available on the PS1, PS2, because PS1 backward compatibility, the PS3, the PSP, and the PS Vita, and technically the Vita TV, whatever you want to call it, and the PS TV in North America. So it's available on like basically everything except for modern consoles, essentially. As long as you have access to a physical copy, you can essentially play this game. But it was left off of the PlayStation Classic, even though they put on Revelation series Persona for who knows what reason. So what I want to talk about is, what do you remember? What do you know about Persona 2 Eternal Punishment? What's your feelings on that game?
So I'm actually, I guess, old enough, even though I'm not actually like that old. I actually bought that game when it first came out in the early 2000s. At the time, my only Persona knowledge was really just what was out there. Obviously, ignoring Jack Bros, because even back then I knew no one was going to own a Virtual Boy. I loved Revelations Persona. Revelations on GBC was cool, but like I always had a hard time getting into RPGs, ironically, on portables back then, whereas like now it's kind of the inverse. So I was very excited for Eternal Punishment, and I remember one of my earliest memories was being infuriatingly confused why this game came in a dual CD holder, but it only had the second half of the game. Like, you knew you were missing Innocent Sin even back then, and it bothered me to like no end. Like, it was just one of those things of like, no, my copy must be missing Innocent Sin. Clearly, Innocent Sin is supposed to be in this. Like, why would we be getting the last half of the story? That makes no sense.
You and me both, but you still got that awesome anime trailer for the first game. You know what I'm talking about?
It was yeah. I mean, it was a choice. It was just one of those weird things of like it was that era of like, I'm sure Atlas saw like what Square did with making Final Fantasy VII not before, and it was one of those things of like, financially and quality wise, probably just made sense to just get like the better one out quicker as opposed to trying to play catch up your whole life. I think if they knew how long of a wait it would have been between Persona 2 Eternal Punishment and 3, they probably wouldn't have sat on the back burner for so long, but thankfully a lot of work had already previously gone into Innocent Sin we never knew about. That actually made the translation project a lot easier for Innocent Sin PSP. But what was so funny about that was the team had gone out of their way specifically to kind of rectify a lot of the criticisms, especially in the West, that Revelations had with Eternal Punishment. So when Eternal Punishment came out in the West, it was kind of the opposite effect of like, hey guys, we know we way over Americanized like everything with this game. We knew there was a lot of content cut. We knew that there was a lot of errors. There was a lot of bugs. Even if you weren't aware of the Snow Queen quest from Revelations being cut out, that is the least of that game's problems, which is saying a lot. So they knew they had a lot of goodwill to make up for, because Atlas at the time was like a plucky, niche publisher, but they were far from having a good reputation. It's like, yeah, like you were putting out Guilty Gear when no one wanted Guilty Gear. It's like, yeah, Guilty Gear is a big deal now, but no one's sitting back with their PS1 copies of the first one being like, this is the best one, guys. It's like they were getting what they could get, and they were just trying to be like, they were as big in the industry back then as, do you remember Working Designs back in the 90s?
That sounds really familiar.
They did like the Lunar games.
Oh,
they did
yeah,
Radiant, like Silvergun. Like they were known for having like really niche, like not super popular series, but like when they did bring a game out, they were known for like, we're gonna have a crazy thick manual, like dummy thick, like clapping those cheeks together with the Staples thick booklet. Embroidered covers, everything like that. Like Atlas was like Working Designs on a budget, which is hilarious because they were a subsidiary of a much more popular company in Japan.
Oh yeah, yeah. When did they become Index Corporation? Was that 2000s?
Yeah, that would be in that'd be in the earlier 2000s. I might have actually even been post Eternal Punishment back then, but the last thing I was going to follow was the inner workings of business back then at the ripe age of like 7. It'd be like, Dad, show me the Nikai. I want to see who's owning Atlas these days. I was barely getting over the fact that I was at my age comprehending, let alone my parents not caring enough that I'm playing these M-rated like RPGs.
Fair enough.
Because remember, guys, Revelations is, I think, still to this day a rated E for everyone.
Really?
Yeah, it was never M, if I'm mistaken. Now that I've said this, watch like Revelations have been rated like KA. Let's see.
I have my copy right over here. I'll just grab it. Just give me 1 second.
Yeah, it's KA. Get a load of that. Go from your first game is KA, and then Eternal Punishment is rated T for teen. So it went KA and then to T for teen. How crazy is that? Yeah, from kids to anyone to teens only. And
How the heck did they pull that off? That's what I want to know.
You know, when you cut out 75% of the culture and content in your game, you might lose a couple of age restrictors.
I don't get to show these things off that often, so I always feel cool when I get to show off the fact that I have the original too.
As a collector, man, you got to show that off. Like that's why like I made a post recently actually, because going back to what we were talking about earlier with Papers, Please and Super Meat Boy. When Papers, Please, a day before it went on sale for everybody, I made a little video, less so to humble brag, but just so to show it off. I'm like, hey, one of the cool things about the physical release of Papers, Please is the rule book in that game. Like, I don't know if you've ever played Papers, Please. It has an actual rule book for everything. The Vita's manual is that whole rule book printed out.
Holy cow! Really?
So it's really thick, like awesome. Like it's obviously like all like in monotone grayscale color, so it's not like a very pretty manual. But like in terms of context and lore, like that's a great cool thing to have to just be able to flip through yourself. So I showed off the manual on my personal Twitter, the much less popular Twitter. I showed that little off on like a boomerang video, just like, hey, look how cool and thick this manual is, and like I had Super Meat Boy behind it. It was like, listen, I don't get to show off the fact that I have this game that like 50 people own in reality, and like 3,000 are sitting in a warehouse in Raleigh just dusting away for the next year plus.
Oh, jeez. I just love the fact that I've got the manual, but not only that, I've still got the mail-in order part too on this one. That's like my most complete copy of a PS1 game I've ever had.
It's sad like now when I see like Atlas games where they have the join our website, be part of the Atlas faithful. I'm like, man, this used to mean something back in the day.
Right.
Used to mean something to be faithful. Now they're just sleeping with anyone they want.
Like, I just love the illustrations in this game. Like, I think this is one of the most detailed. Like, when I look at the original Revelations Persona, I'm pretty positive that one was a mostly black and white book. I'm gonna open mine up real quick and just check now that I've said that. You're giving me a reason to.
When did you pick up your copy of Eternal Punishment?
Way later than I should have. Let's put it.
I mean, at the time there was no hype for EP. EP was already a late PS1 release. It was like it didn't look very graphically impressive. We knew that like it had been.
Yeah, it's black and white. The original.
Yeah, way to go, guys! You're killing it on the manual. You know what? That by Atlas 2020 standards would be good. That's what's sad. Revelations manual is good by 2020 standards.
You don't want to know what I paid for Revelations Persona.
See, because like you can get Revelations not for a terrible price. It's getting it complete that's where it gets you.
Yeah, because you could pick up just like the case and the disc for like $100. But if you want everything, it's like you got to either hunt like I did and get it piece by piece, which is actually how I got my Revelations Persona. And over time, not like all at once either. That was the worst part, was like waiting to find something within a price range I was willing to pay. But I love this inside cover art that they used to do on the Atlas games.
Oh yeah, with the old jewel cases. That was always like so fun of like having like all the different like art and what it would do for them. Man, thank God none of those old games sold over 1 million. Can you imagine how ugly those covers would look with the like green?
I'm so sad this didn't
greatest
come.
hits.
Oh God! Ooh.
Like imagine just imagine like all of Kaneko's art with like just green big old. We sold 1 million copies.
This would look like garbage if it had the green bar on the side.
I might need to like Photoshop that into like cursed like content of just like, guys, this is like the thing, because I think in terms of sales, like we would love it if more like 1 million people bought Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, but in reality, it's like, no, we're good. Leave it niche, please.
This one was relatively cheap though. The Japanese one, you can get it for like $15.
Oh, well, dude, even still, yeah. All the like, thankfully, the Japanese market, especially with PSP and Vita. It's totally the inverse. Like Japanese imports, dirt cheap, just because the market over there will never be able to keep up with how many were actually produced.
Right.
Whereas in America, like if you start looking for PSP stuff now, like we live in a world, Chris. We live in a society that the price of UMD movies has gone up. Yep. Think about that.
Yes, they have.
Like, for the price of one copy of Eternal Punishment, for the price of Innocent Sin in English, you could get every Persona game physically on PlayStation Portable in Japanese. Like, let that sink in. If you got the launch edition with the CD of Innocent Sin, the English version, you could get Persona 1 Remake, Innocent Sin Remake.
All right, hold on.
Eternal Punishment, and Persona 3 Portable.
Now you're making me pull out more stuff. Hold on here.
You gotta show it off. With that sweet bonus box.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know me. I have that stuff. That's who
I
am.
The PSP situation is just, it's getting too damn high.
I don't understand why. I also have this for some reason, the Japanese version of Innocent Sin.
You gotta have it. Why not?
But I've only collected 2 Japanese Persona games. It's Persona 2 Eternal Punishment on the PSP and Innocent Sin on the PSP. The rest of them...
Might I recommend, if not just for the oddity of they'll be the only physical versions this ever exist, the physical copies of Persona 3 and 5 Dancing are continue to just be dirt cheap. Like they are just asininely cheap.
I have that one, and I have for Vita.
Yes, for Vita.
Oh, I thought about it.
That's the only version of those physically.
I have thought about that one actually.
Those will be ones that once history hits, like the games I always tell people like are that'll be rare is like Persona 3, 5, Dancing on Vita, and Catherine. Catherine is going to hit in like 10 or 20 years where people are going to realize that was like the last big AAA game, and not enough people realize that like barely 10,000 copies of that game got made in Japan. So that game's gonna like be stupid expensive. Like even now by Japanese standards, Vita games are pretty cheap. Catherine over a year after its release, full body on Vita just for the cart is still like $90.
70.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty positive I saw it for 70 on eBay.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things of like all in perspective, and like even going with if we jump ahead to Eternal Punishment, like PSP.
You cut out there, Spencer.
It sucks because it's like. I know why. Like we'd even talked about before. I know why the PSP remake didn't happen.
I've kind of heard. It's mostly like late cycle, and then the fact that there was other stuff going on at that time.
It just boggles my mind, and it just I think almost even goes to show that like. Not that because like there was clearly interest by people who worked at the company at the time to make it happen, but what it was so odd to me is that then like no one ever had like the foresight to just be like, okay, if we don't want to make a PSP game in 2013, why don't we just port this version to any other platform? Like this is going to run on anything. Look at this thing. Like because everyone's watching right now. This is the PlayStation 1 original footage, right?
Yep.
Like, the game is not that much drastically better looking on PSP because it doesn't need to be. Like, those remakes weren't about making them better in terms of playability. They were just about making them more accessible on this highly selling system.
That and the Tetsuya scenarios they added, that was pretty cool, actually.
Yes, like, and there is like meaningful stuff they added to Eternal Punishment that like just giving us the PS1 version isn't good enough. It's like, oh look, you're completing the story. It's like, no, that's like giving me the salad and telling me how the breadsticks were at Olive Garden. I know that bread's good. Give me that breadstick. Yeah. And in this case, the breadstick is Tetsuya.
The best part about that scenario, in my opinion, is that you kind of get an origin of the shadows in the series with that extra scenario. And I'm still working on this lore video I've been working on for a while. I just haven't had time to do it since I've been working 6/12s. But essentially, I'm working on a lore video that explains the shadows in the Persona series.
Well, I, for one, think that before this episode goes up, you should make a goal to be closer to finishing this episode. I mean, the lore video, at least. So how long in the tooth is it so far?
Oof, too long. I was talking about it with Niarli back when he was on the podcast, but I have been working 6/12 midnights for the better part of 4 months.
I think going kind of at least finishing up my thoughts on the situation with Eternal Punishment. This really sucks. Is I love the characters and the story of Persona 2's duology.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
I hate that I don't like recommending it to people right now. It feels so messy. It's like I hate that I have to tell someone play a great PSP remake and then play a botched PS1 original. It's like, yeah, like Eternal Punishment has just always gotten the shaft of like when it first came out, it was clearly missing something. And then you thought once the Innocent Sin remake got announced, it was like, okay, cool. Well, that will take care of it once they do the same thing with Eternal Punishment. And when they did what was naturally expected of them, not giving it to us in the West has always just left that bad taste in our mouth of like, there's never going to be an easy way for us to tell people how to experience the story the way they wanted it to as a company, which is just continue to be like so frustrating.
I 100% agree with you. I would absolutely think this series of games, the first three, the Revelations, Persona 2, and Persona 2, Innocence and Eternal Punishment, would be like a perfect set of games to get some kind of Switch rebirth with like upgraded visuals. Maybe they do something. The story is so good on its own. Like I'd hate for them to do anything that would mess with it. But you could probably somehow implement a days system to this game, and also probably add social links if you wanted to like modernize it like the current Persona games. I would not personally enjoy, or I would enjoy it, but I would not personally be a huge fan of that idea. But I could see them actually doing it and probably being relatively successful with the Persona 2 duology. And what would be cool is if instead of releasing it as two separate games, why don't we just, put in a little bit of extra development and have some like carryover from the first game to the second game, even though there's not supposed to be any of it, but like some little like glitches in the system would be kind of cool to see, like Easter eggs from one to the other, and have it all on one disc with just bare minimum Easter eggs that would carry over from one to the next.
See, I wish I could have that kind of optimism. The only reason I can't is because I know that they don't have the available team, like, bandwidth to make those exist in a way that those games and that story deserves to be told, on top of the fact that the key creatives that make that game so special and so unique, like the writers and the designers and even the artists who primarily worked on that duology, they're just not active in that company anymore. Like even like the writers don't work on it. Like the writer of like Persona 2's duology has now been working on the Caligula Effect and is now about to, like any day now, they're about to announce the sequel of the Caligula Effect. Whereas like I know that game's not universally loved upon, but like I'm sure that writer is much more happy to be now working on an IP where he can shine as opposed to like be under the shadow of Persona his whole life.
I just find it's funny that the two series I enjoy the most in the RPG realm would be Fire Emblem and Persona. I find it so interesting that the original like design creatives behind both those series left after like game number 3, 4, 5. In Fire Emblem timeline, it was like number 5, and then in this one, it was after the second of the Persona 2 games. I just find it interesting because they both had rebirths into something brand new, whereas Fire Emblem had a rebirth on Game Boy Advance. Essentially, PS2 is the rebirth for the modern Persona series, without the original creative.
Yeah, it's crazy, but I mean, hey, never say never. Obviously, like we can keep like holding out like hope for it. Now, like I mentioned, I would love nothing more than for these to have like a definitive way for them to be experienced. So hopefully we can at least just keep bullying them into existence for at least something to happen. And at the very least, like I am sure at some point in time there will be a version where people can just be like point to it and go, okay, here is the go-to PSP remake that you can experience X, Y, or Z way.
And if Iwakura Productions does eventually finish the fan translation, that will be the way I recommend people play Eternal Punishment. But in the meantime, you get this version, which is it's good, very good. In fact, for a PS1 game, it's fantastic. But I mean, it's better than this guy. That's for sure. As far as a translation and American release goes, it's definitely a step up of that. But as far as like being faithful to the original work and the story, aside from the music, the PSP version would be probably the best way to experience these games, if it eventually comes to fruition and actually gets patched. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, 100%. Or I guess I could also say just learn Japanese and then you're set. But I mean, hey, who's got time for that?
Right. I definitely don't. Anyways, I've already thanked you, but I'm going to thank you again because this is my last time having an episode with you for the week. So thank you again for being on the podcast, Mr. Spencer Presley. I'm always available. Well, not always available, but I am available for a social.
All right, right after
future.
this, I got a slot open. 3 more hours. We're getting into it.
You joke, but I could do that. I'm up all night tonight, anyways.
I know I cannot. I am so disgusting and needing a shower that everyone listening to this could probably tell.
So, just to finish this out, do you recommend people play Persona 2?
I do. I 100% recommend people play Persona 2, especially if you can enjoy the characters and the story, and especially like the music. Whether I know each version has its own pros and cons for it. But like I appreciate both of the version soundtracks for very different reasons.
Yeah, if I'm gonna butcher this guy's name, but Shoji Meguro is one of my favorite composers of all time.
And the entire other P sound team, which often always gets forgotten. But hey, that's we just call that Uematsu syndrome, where everyone's like, that guy did all the music. It was like, well, yeah, but there are also other people who have.
Well, he also like was the director of several games too, which is pretty impressive for a guy who started with music.
Yeah, looking at you, Uematsu. Where's your Final Fantasy game you directed? We can barely get you in for more than a theme song now, and you can't even direct a game. Jesus.
Yeah, there's also Marty O'Donnell, who's got his own video game company. Similar comeuppance, music to video game production.
Are we really bringing Halo into this again for the fifth time tonight?
Just Marty O'Donnell.
We can't let Halo die. Well, it's okay. Halo let Marty O'Donnell out, so it's all right. They were like, we don't need you anymore, Marty. Enjoy directing your games. You can do Final Fantasy 16.
Right, there you go. Yeah, you gotta keep the Halo fans happy. Feed them their little bits. No, I'm just kidding.
You gotta feed them their krill every night.
That one was for Will. As always, I'm Chris from the CHRILLCAST.
And I'm Will.
No kidding. I'm dying here. All right. As always, we will see you on the next CHRILLCAST. Thank you.